What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to get started on the repairs that need to be made on the frame of the car. I have this panel here. I ordered this from Auto Atlanta. I think they may source them from Restoration Design, I'm not sure. But this will repair all of this in here, other than the suspension console stuff, which I've had several comments. I've had people contact me. Yes, I've talked to Restoration Design. They don't make that. I've talked to several reputable restoration shops that specialize in 914s. They said that nobody makes these and they cut them off of donor cars. Since I don't have a donor car, I'm going to make my own, and I'll walk you guys through the step-by-step process of how I'm going to do that. But right now, I need to get this car set up on jack stands. I need to get it leveled, and I need to spend a couple hours taking measurements because I don't have any jigs to set the new suspension pieces in place before I weld them. So I'm going to do everything off of measurements, and I'll explain that when I do it. All right, so I've got it up on jack stands. It's sitting pretty level. I should be able to get good measurements off of this and start cutting. So before I do though, I want to show you guys a little trick I saw online. So no motor or transmission in this thing. The axles flop around. So if you need to move the car around, you can take a chain or a strap. I took just a motorcycle strap type of thing, and then 2 zip ties going over that axle, and it supports the axles, and you can roll the car around without the axle shafts flopping around. I am getting ready to take the axle shafts out here in a minute, and then I'm going to pull all this rear suspension loose, and I can start taking my measurements. But I just wanted to share that little tip with you guys. So. All right, guys, I figured I'd stop for a second and give you guys a little walkthrough of what I've done to this point, just to help anybody out that's doing the same thing. So real quickly, I disconnected the shock and left the bolt in the control arm so that it didn't swing down. I loosened up both of these big, these were 22 millimeter sockets on both sides of the control arm that mount to the suspension consoles. And I left the nut loose on this one, took it out of the inside, and then piece that holds this up in here, that's 17 millimeter up from the bottom, and that's what adjusts. But you have to take these out as you slide that control arm, because there's no way for the control arm to come out without taking these out. So it would probably work better if you had 2 people, one person to hold the control arm and one person to undo it. But I was able to grab a hold of it, undo it with the impact, and then just slide it out of the way. It did hang up a little bit on the shock bolt, but I would rather have that control arm level so I can get a hold of it and then just wiggle that shock bolt out rather than have it flopped down trying to hold it up. And I think it would just be easier to do it the way that I did it. So that's where I'm at so far. I'm getting ready to drop the shock, and then I'm going to go to the other side and do the exact same thing. Oh yeah, and the axle nut is a 30 millimeter axle nut, so you pull the cotter pin off the castle nut, and I use an impact, got the axle nut off of there. And I know that sometimes you have to use like a brass punch and drive them through because they get locked up in there. Mine was nice and easy. It just pushed out by hand, so that was no big deal. All right, so I've got the other side all stripped. Found a little bit of damage on the other side. Actually, the 3 bolts that hold the carrier for the swing arm, they sheared. I couldn't get them loose. I put a big ratchet on them and broke them. So that to me says that there's a lot of rot up in there. Something seized those bolts up. So I'm gonna go ahead and make an outer console for both sides. Even though the other side looks to be in good shape, I have a feeling the inside of it's not so good. So while it's apart, I'm just gonna go ahead and make both sides, weld both sides in, no big deal. I do need to order an inner console for this side for the passenger side and an engine shelf for the passenger side that all gets welded in. So I'm gonna go ahead and get those ordered. I'm gonna make all my patterns and jigs to make sure that all the suspension stuff gets welded in right and everything still is good to where my alignment, my camber, everything's gonna be good. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get that done, and it'll probably be a couple more days before I actually pick back off recording for this segment. So I'll get back at it, and I'll get back with you guys as soon as I'm ready. All right, guys, so it's been a couple of days since I last filmed. I've been trying to figure out exactly how I wanted to do this. It would have been easy just to take some measurements, write everything down, and then fabricate new outer mounts after I've replaced all this. But I didn't really want to do that. I wanted to make fixtures so that I know that they're perfect. And if any of you guys run into the same issue, like I can help you out. Like I can make some duplicates of the fixtures and send them to you. Maybe even make the outer console pieces if anybody's interested in that. So I guess let me know, and let me know in the comments or hit me up on Instagram and let me know if anybody needs this, or if maybe you'd be interested in the future if you wanted to change to something stronger than stock. But for right now, I'm gonna go ahead and get these fixtures made before I cut all this off. I'm starting out with basically some 1/8 inch by 3 by like 36, I think, piece from the hardware store. I got a piece of 1 by 2 by 3/16, I believe, and then a piece of 2 by 2 by probably 8. And this is the stuff that I'm gonna make the fixtures out of. And then I'm gonna get some Unistrut, which you can get at Home Depot or any hardware store, and run across the engine mount, the front engine mount. And then I'll be able to have measurements of where this fixture bolts onto that so that everything is straight in relation side to side, and I've got a good way to locate it. And that'll also help me out that if you guys need any of this stuff, and I make, if I end up making some of these consoles for some of you guys and make some of these fixtures, you can go get your own piece of Unistrut. That way we don't have to ship something that's 6 foot long, and I can send you the measurements. Bolt the Unistrut up to your engine mount, and then all of the fixtures will bolt right up to that Unistrut, and then everything will locate itself so that you guys don't have to do any measuring or anything, and it'll be, it'll fit. I know that's how Tangerine Racing does on their console kits. Their console kit is an inner and an outer all together, and it's racing only, and I think it's like $1,500 or $1,600, which it really isn't a bad deal at all when you think about how much the inner consoles are and things. But I want to continue to use my stock inner consoles. I've got a new one coming for this side. I ordered an inner console and an engine shelf for the passenger side, and I'm gonna put all that back together stock and probably run the Tangerine Racing braces that go up to the front, up to the firewall. But then the outers, since nobody makes these, I'm gonna go ahead and do my best at making a set that can be duplicated. So like I said, if anybody needs them, if not, then I'll have them for this, and I'll have the fixtures if I ever bang this up, or if I need to replace it, or if I build another one of these. So that's where I'm gonna go with this. So I'm gonna try to get like some, I don't know if I'm gonna do time lapse or whether I'm just gonna shoot some pictures as I'm building these, but just to give you guys an overview of what these fixtures are gonna be like. It's gonna take me a little bit of time. It probably is gonna add an extra day to the front part of the build, but I feel like that's gonna pay off in the long run, installing these and squaring things up. I'll measure, but it's just a double check. The measurements aren't going to be the basis of getting everything aligned. The fixtures will be the basis of that. So I've got to work on this side a little bit to make sure that it's where it needs to be because it's so rotted. But I'm pretty sure that I can get it back to where it needs to be stock. I'll use the other side as a reference for measuring, but then I'll make the fixtures for that. So we'll go from there. Yeah. All right, so I've leveled the car and I've gone to the other side, put my angle finder on the pads for the outer console, and it's sitting at 0. So I know that this one should also be at 0 since the car's level. That one's at 0, this one should be at 0. This one's at about 2.5 degrees cambered in, which would explain, you know, part of the camber issue. And I think it actually cambered quite a bit more whenever the car was under its own weight. So I've got to straighten this out, and I don't have anything that'll quite grab that. So I'm just gonna break out the BFH. So I'll give it a few taps, put the angle finder back on. I'm gonna try to get this thing at 0, and then I can make my template for the fixture. I think that looks a lot better. All right, guys, so as you can tell, I'm wearing different clothes, so it's a different day. Had a couple days at work, and now I'm back on the car. Hopefully get these fixtures made this weekend and start getting the new suspension on there. Just wanted to give you guys a real quick tip while I'm making the fixtures. When you're cutting a little piece of metal and you need a hole in the middle of it, drill it before you cut it out. So that way you've got something to hang on to, you got something to clamp up. It's a lot easier than cutting. This is like an 1 13/16 inch square to go in the end of some tubing for the fixture. And I don't want to cut this, drill it, and have it, you know, flopping around. I don't have a drill press here right now, so I'm gonna be drilling this by hand. It's a pain in the butt to clamp it down. So do yourself a favor, leave it on the full piece, drill it, then cut it out. It'll make life a lot easier. All right, guys, I've got the fixtures made. I've got the car all supported so that nothing falls in half whenever I cut all the structural members out of it. And I'll show you guys real quick what I've got going on before I start cutting it apart. All right, so we'll start in the back here. I basically built some legs to go from the rear transmission mount. Screwed the transmission mount in, screwed the legs to that, and that will hold this back half straight and level. And then I took a piece of unistrut and attached across the front the motor mount attachments on the chassis. That's all bolted down, and then I've got those pieces wedged underneath there to hold up that, keep everything square. And then I have the fixtures that I made here. I did both sides, and these are just going to be for kind of a reference point, because I'm going to I'll locate the inner off of measurements, the engine tray, you know, where it needs to go from the factory, and then I will essentially build the rear mounts and get them kind of clamped in place, and then I'll mock the suspension up, and I'll do a static alignment on it with the suspension, you know, off the ground, and before I actually weld the mounts on, so that I make sure the mounts are exactly where they need to be. I've got a 2x4 running across, going from the sub rail to sub rail, or the sill, and that's the jack stands. That's how I'm supporting mainly the back half of the car. And then I've got the front jack stands up underneath the front suspension mounting bar. So I think everything will stay nice and straight. I don't think there should be any issues. You know, I'm gonna cut this all apart here in a little bit and hope for the best. as you just saw, it didn't take much to get this thing cut off of there. It was rotten all the way around. There was just a few pieces of metal holding this thing together. I'm really glad that it didn't come apart while we were driving. I got really lucky on that one. So next, I'm gonna hold the new panel up there, figure out exactly how much of this it's getting replaced, because that panel is meant to go on with the door jamb off, with I believe maybe with this quarter panel off. So I'm not gonna put the entire panel on, just really what needs to be replaced to get this thing fixed right. All right, so I've done a little initial trimming to this panel, mainly right along here, just so I can get it to fit up in there without taking the door jamb apart, because my door jamb is pretty solid and I don't really want to cut into it that far. So then I've gone and marked lines of kind of where it goes on the outside, and then I've taped these lines off about 2 to 3 inches depending on the inside of that, and I'm going to cut that out, and then I'm going to prep all of the other surface around it, and then I'll Cleco it in, and I'll start to trim it to fit. You may paint some layout fluid and use a scribe, but I want to get it to fit good before I cut it to perfect size, and I'll just start creeping in on it. That way I don't cut too much off of it. So, you know, that's where I'm at here. All right, so I've got most of this outer cut away so I can really assess this. Honestly, I'm really happy with the inner. It's, you know, not terrible. I expected worse. Down here at the bottom, I knew that this was messed up because I had made that patch forward and had included that in it. So I got that all cut back loose. And I'll make another one that integrates to the pinch weld of the new panel. So I got to get all of these pinch welds cleaned up so that I can get that panel fitted and ensure that it's straight. And then I'll start getting the edges all fine-tuned, and we'll get that panel Clecoed on. And then I'll start making all of the other panels and getting the inner console and the engine tray all fitted up before anything's welded out. It'll all be Clecoed up so that I can skip around, spread the heat evenly, and make sure that I don't twist the car as I weld it. So, all right, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and end this video here for the day. I can get this thing edited and uploaded Monday morning, and that way I'm not too far apart on videos. And I think that I'll have the final fitting video will be sometime next week. So if you guys have any questions, hit me up on Instagram. I'll put that right there again. And I hope everybody has a great week. Later.